Greetings, Embers, and happy holidays to those that celebrate. My name is Phoenix. If you would like to learn how to become a member of this channel or would like to buy me a coffee as a special thank you, those links can be found down below. Also, if you're a first-time listener and enjoy what you are hearing, or you've been here and haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment. Not only does it help this channel out, but it also reminds you of every time I upload a video. There's also a new feature in the description box. If you would like to send me personal messages or questions, please check out my askme.com link down below. With all of that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person in the morning. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack, or tuck in and get warm, and enjoy this dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Horrific Christmas Stories. Right after this intro and ad will play, I'll read the first story an ad will play, and after that there will be no more ads within this video. Disclaimer: this video will be set to a crackling fire along with dark Christmas music playing in the background. Please enjoy. It's Christmas Eve, 1990, and as tradition, because the door to the attic was in my room, I always slept in my brother's room. Excited to see what Santa had brought me, I quickly went to sleep. In the middle of the night, the sound of the closet door in my brother's room opening woke me up, and as I opened my eyes, there stood a man dressed in dark-colored clothes, just walking past me though. I should have been scared out of my mind, but I wasn't. I felt at ease and comfortable, like I knew him though. This was the only time I had ever seen him, as he passed through the door leading out of my brother's room and onto the upstairs landing that connected our two rooms and a bathroom. I jumped up to follow him, but as I got to the landing, he was no longer there. I looked in the bathroom and in my room, but nothing was there. Then I heard something down the stairs, so I looked over the balcony to the living room downstairs. It was dark, but I could make out the fact our Santa gifts had been delivered in the glow of the Christmas lights, and figured I had almost caught Santa. So I got excited, woke my brother, and like two normal kids on Christmas Day, we ran downstairs and excitedly woke up Mom and Dad. It took a couple of days before the memory of what had woke me up came back to me, and took years before I ever told anyone about it. One day, me and my mom just so happened to be talking about ghosts and things like that when I told her the story of a Christmas Eve in 1990. And as I described the man to her, she smiled and showed me this really old black and white photo of a man standing next to a horse and plow. It was the man I had seen. Turns out, everyone in the family had seen him, but hadn't told me because I was so young and they didn't want to scare me. The man in the picture was my mom's granddad. He had passed away before me or my brother had ever been born. My first experience of the paranormal, and it was family. That explains why I was never scared. Here I am, 36 years old, some 28 years later, and I can still remember that night like it was just last night. This story took place only last week, just before Christmas, when me and my friends decided to go out for a few drinks at Christmas time. It was a usual night, but busier than normal night, but a great atmosphere nonetheless. We went to the usual bar we go to that does special craft beers that we love. While in there, my old college friend was there that I haven't seen in a while and was catching up with them. You know, the usual, housework, family, etc. He suggested that we go to this new bar across the street. We finished our drinks and went across to this new place, and it was amazing. The place was jam-packed, but had a great welcoming atmosphere. So we managed to get a table, and when we ordered, I had to use the bathroom. While walking to the bathroom, I passed this black-haired girl who's seen me and said hi while checking me out. I said hi back and proceeded to the bathroom. I returned back to the table when my college friend said, "I have to go." So we said our goodbyes and finished our drinks. My other friends suggested we go to this late night bar, and so we went there. Getting in, the place was more quiet than usual, but it was mainly couples, but we stayed and ordered drinks. A few hours passed when these 3 girls came in and were at the bar ordering. They were very drunk, and who was with them? That black-haired girl was there. She's seen me and smiles at me, and I just smiled back at her. About 10 minutes later, she came over to my table and said my name. I just looked at her and looked at my friends, which they also too looked puzzled. What scared me most is what she said next. She told me my address, hometown, who I was, and all of my family. Puzzled, I asked her did she know me through one of my relations. She said, "No, I just know you." I never seen her in my whole life, just in the other bar earlier. She started talking to my friend, and then I seen her other friend look in horror and walked over and grabbed the black-haired girl away from us. We just looked at each other stunned, like, what just happened? We decided to go out to the smoking area to have a smoke. While walking to a table, I passed the small blonde woman who called me by my name, and I just said hi to her. Puzzled, I slightly looked back in that direction, and I heard her say to her, "Fuck, I called him by his name." And they left. We soon left, and nothing crazy happened since. Nearly everywhere I go, people always come up and talk to me. I seem like a friendly face, but I have a few share of creepy encounters. This story has me more puzzled than scared. This won't be the creepiest thing to you, or that you'll ever hear, but now that I'm addicted to true crime cases, I shudder when I remember this. One Christmas Eve, we, meaning my mom, sister, and I, were driving back from a very late family gathering. Our house was about 20 minutes away from the party. I think I was about 18 and my sister was 14. Our house was in a new development, but the drive there was rather solitary, kind of through the woods. The highway was one of those winding highways along a river where you drive about 40 miles an hour max. To the right was all the woods, to the left, the river. There's one turn off the road onto a small bridge to the left, a few miles before our turnoff. This night, I remember sitting in the front seat, kind of drowsy and ready to go to bed. It must have been 2 in the morning. My mom always used to drive really slow, which drove me nuts. It would always irritate me. She'd also tap the brakes constantly, also annoying. This night we were driving along, and just before a bend in the road and a few feet past the bridge, there was a car positioned perpendicular to the road. That is, blocking the road, that is. There was 2 men just sitting in the car looking at us, not trying to turn around or anything, just blocking the road. My mom slammed on the brakes, and I've never seen her move more quickly. She cursed and threw the car into reverse and turned into the bridge to turn around. Because at the end of the bridge on the other side, another car had blocked the other road. I just remember my heart slamming against my ribs. I had no idea what was going on, but I do remember my mom saying something like these men were up to no good. She's lived in Mexico City in the 70s and had experienced lots of crime and shady situations. The idea that something terrible was planned was brought home when we saw that the other guy blocking the end of the bridge. My mom managed to turn the car around and hit the gas, and we got the hell out of there. We drove back to my aunt's house. There were no cell phones. And called the police. They took a long time. Finally, they gave us a police escort back home. I never drove home that way again. I took the longer route on another road. We never did find out what those guys were up to, but after all the crime stories I've read, I can only imagine. It was really, really scary. I'm glad my mom was a cautious driver, and that she surprised me with her skills. So, If you drive a long, scary, desolate, lonely road home, drive slow and please be on the lookout. So this happened after work this past Christmas Eve. I work a later second shift from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. or until we're done. I should also mention that while the warehouse is in a nicer area, a couple blocks down, it gets sketchy at night. We got done at around 2 a.m., and me and my one friend were the first out to the parking lot, and we're standing there talking while we were warming up our cars. We were talking for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and during that time, I saw this small sedan drive by slowly, but didn't think much of it because it was a little icy out, and figured they were just being cautious. But then I saw it slowly coming back down the road and pulled in and parked in the parking lot across from us, which was strange because it's a welding shop parking lot and no one is ever there past 10 p.m. besides police doing speed traps. At that point, I pointed it out to my friend and he said he noticed it as well and thought it was weird. Then this big dude got out of the car and walked across the street over to me and my friend, while the car he got out of drove off. He asked my friend for a smoke, and as he did that, I walked over to my car to start scraping it off, and so he would probably just not talk to me. But as soon as I stepped back out of the car with my wallet in hand so I could use one of my cards to scrape the windows, he called over to me. I didn't want to be rude even though something felt off about this situation. But I said fuck it, there's cameras watching me and the rest of the workers should be out within 10 minutes or so I'll be fine. I'm 6 foot tall, 180 pounds soaking wet, and the dude was a good bit bigger than me. I'm guessing he was 6'2" to 6'4" and a solid 250 plus. He was trying to make small talk with me, asking about what we do there, how it sucks we have to work on Christmas Eve. Just random bullshit like that. But I got the feeling he was sizing me up. So even though I have extreme social anxiety and can usually barely make eye contact even with people I know, I remember my grandpa always telling me if I'm in a sketchy situation with someone to stand tall, chest out a bit, make direct eye contact the entire time. Essentially, do whatever to make you look like you aren't scared or nervous, so you look like you're more trouble than you're worth. I saw him keep looking down towards my wallet, so I took a small step back so I could make sure I was in the view of the cameras. Then he said, "So hey man, do you think you could give me a ride to my house? It's just right down the road. I ran out of gas at the store and need to get back to my house to get money." Now, the grocery store he said his car ran out of gas at is about a mile down the road to the east, but yet the dude came from the west. And also, if he needed a ride to his house in the west, why wouldn't he have just gotten one from the person who dropped him off, who came from that direction in the first place? I then remembered reading online somewhere that around the holidays, people will do whatever they can to try and get someone to give them a ride, and then they force them to take them back to their house and rob them. At this point, I'm like, fuck this. This dude is trying to rob me, so I just walked backwards towards my car since I knew I had a giant utility knife under the seat, and tell him I'm good and to please get off of our company property. And he was like, "Come on, man, it's Christmas Eve," while looking visibly pissed. And I said, "That sucks, dude. Get off the property." At this point, I'm at my car and he could see me reaching under the seat. And he then turns and walks away and disappears in the alley a block away. I then go over to my friend's car to tell him what happened, and he said the dude was trying to get him to give him money for smokes, and then he tried to get him to give him a ride to the ATM. 2 days later, a picture of the same guy is on the local police department's Facebook page, asking for information on him because he was wanted in relation to a string of armed robberies that happened during Christmas week. Where can I start? So my grandparents have a big house in England due to my granddad having a lot of sad money. By sad money, I mean he got it from inheritance because most of his family died off when he was young, leaving him to retire early. Anyway, before I was born, it's where the majority of my family stayed. My granddad, step-grandma, 4 uncles, a black Labrador, and my mom. So a very busy house. This house wasn't too old when my granddad bought it, maybe 20 years old, and it didn't look freaky. In fact, it's quite modern for an English house. For quite a while, everything was all right until the first incident happened. The first incident wasn't scary. Frankly, could have been a prank done by any of the family. It started off in the smallest room, known as the kids' room. There was a lock on the outside of the door to prevent the dog getting in, as this door was easy for him to push open. Every time a family member, no matter who, would be locked in after they enter. This meant that they would not be able to unlock the door as they were on the inside. Most times they would call out and bang on the door until someone came, but sometimes there would be no one home and the person on the inside would have to use their landline to call a nearby family to come over and let them out. My family isn't very superstitious, especially my granddad, who has zero tolerance for anything. I like to call him a boomer. So everyone used to blame my mom. I know it's just her word, but she promised the family, and even years later, still promises me it's not her. My mom wasn't very superstitious until she had to spend a night in the small room, as when she went traveling, one of her brothers took over her room. The second incident occurred over 2 of the nights she slept in that room. She claimed one night she woke up at around 1 to 2 a.m. and saw a very tall figure next to the door to go out of the room. She thought it might have been her eyes not properly adjusting after just waking up, so she lay back down and turned to face the wall. She then turned around again about 10 minutes later, seeing the room much clearer in the dark, and the figure was still there. She thought this time it was one of her brothers, so she called out to them. There was no response, and she started to get angry and turned on her lamp. Nothing happened next to the door, so she slowly turned off her lamp, a bit shaken up, and went back to sleep. The next night, the same thing happened, but that night she was less anxious and brushed it off, never really talking about it. But on the third night, waking up again, there was nothing, no figure at the door. She thought it was weird, but still didn't really ever mention it. Until after I was born and came to stay over one Christmas holiday. This was the third incident. As I was the youngest of around 6, I had to stay in the kids' room. Christmas Eve came and I woke up at around 12 to 12:30. I turned around in the bed and noticed a figure at the side of the door that scared me. I covered my face with the duvet and stayed like that for about 5 minutes. As a child, I was very superstitious, listening to all the rumors of ghosts, so I was too scared to get out of bed and go past it to go out the door. After those 5 minutes, I decided to face my fears and go to Mom, but when I took my head out from under the covers, there was nothing by the door anymore. I came to realize it might be my granddad, so I brushed it away. This happened until Boxing Day, with occurrence from 12 to 4 in the morning. It became a routine to me, and never thought to bring it up to my mom until this year. It was the summer holidays, and I was spending the holidays at home, which is only 10 minutes away from my granddad's house as I moved out 4 years ago. I decided to go visit my cousins who were staying at my granddad's, and when I got there, my youngest cousin, who was 6 years old, came running up to me and said, "Why is there a man always standing by the door at night?" This ran chills down my spine, and then I began to talk to my mom about it, who then talked to my family. We all ended up having weird experiences in the small room, and ever since have all called it the naughty kids room to scare the boys, saying if they're bad, they'll have to go up into the room at night, and we'll make the strange man come out. Let's just say my cousins are well behaved now. So, what's the one conclusion I can bring this to? I think it'll be the kids' room is haunted. This was roughly a decade and some change ago. I was in 6th grade and was home alone because of Christmas break and divorced parents. I lived in one of the bigger towns of Alaska and lived in a middle-class neighborhood. Houses spaced pretty far apart with very long driveways down each. But the next-door neighbors knew us well enough to know if anything didn't look right. It was about 4 p.m., I believe, and my mom was off work early but stopped to get groceries. Kind of a gift in itself to not go shopping. I haven't grown out of my back problems yet and couldn't stand walking around for over an hour. Anyways, I'm in my room watching a movie with Jackie Chan, Around the World in 80 Days, I think it's called, when I hear knocking on the door. I didn't answer, thinking whoever it was would just be asking for my mom or dad about solar panels or something. But then I hear it slowly getting louder and louder, and around the 3rd time it got louder, I started to get scared. I was always told to call the cops if people would act as suspicious as them to call the cops right away. But I guess I was just too terrified at the moment, being in pajamas and enjoying my favorite movie at the time. So not knowing what to do while 2 guys are literally banging on the door, I call my mom. I tell her what's going on and she says it's probably just Mormons. Not for you guys, but what the fuck, Mom? We're in Alaska. I didn't know what a Mormon was. And not to worry. I told her how it kept getting louder and I thought they might break the door in. It had a pretty big but thick stained glass at chest height. She says to just calm down until she starts to hear it. This only took place within about a minute, but every 10 seconds or so it grew even louder, and she started to freak out. She told me to stay right in my room with the door locked and don't make a sound while she calls the cops. So we hang up while I wait for my dad to answer my call. I'm looking around for anything in my room. I grabbed a t-ball bat and sat on my bed freaking out, and I didn't have a window facing the front of the house. Just the side, which didn't do me any good. Finally, my dad answers and I tell him what's going on and that Mom was calling the cops right now. He wasn't legally allowed to be on the property, but he's very protective. He lived very close to the police station at the time and raced over to me. While I'm waiting and waiting for the police or my mom, I decided to peek my head out. The way the house was set up, I could stalk out of my bedroom door and see the backyard, and without walking more than 2 steps, able to peek out the corner and see through the living room bay window. I saw that they'd reversed their car almost right up to our garage door, and I could partially see through the door 2 men pounding away. I stayed there and saw the first guy send the other around back, and saw his face as he went to walk around the house. I hid before he could see me and waited. I realized after what they were doing, the one around back tried to open our glass sliding doors on the balcony. Thankfully, not only was it locked, but also a piece of wood was in the rubber so that if they overpowered the lock, it wouldn't open more than an inch. He started to try to break it as well, and then my mom called me back, crying and wanting to know if I was okay. She was pulled over at the store's gas station and said that the police would be there ASAP, and she said she was on her way home right now. After about a minute of them trying through the front and back, they regrouped back near the front door, and I was really tired of them making me feel scared. So I walked out of my room to the front door, yelling at them in a tank top and shorts holding a bat. They didn't hear me until I was right at the door and spooked them. They ran to the car to drive away, and only when they got in the car did I open the door to keep yelling at them. I forgot what I was yelling, but it drove them off. My mom got home a couple minutes after and held me until my dad came, and I went out to his truck and showed him I'm okay, and told him how I'd scared them off. He hugged me and gave me a kiss, leaving before him and my mom could fight over him being there. Thankfully, she didn't care at all, and she kept me talking about the men until the cops came over, about an hour later. He didn't seem too interested in talking to me until I told him that I could easily tell him the face of the guy at the front door, and a little of the other guy as well. He said he suspected that they were a group that had been breaking in the past 2 weeks, stealing Christmas presents and other stuff, but this was what linked them together. They were found a couple weeks later, and they linked them to over 10 other burglaries. The same night they tried to break in, I had my best friend come over, and we sat up all night with my bat and one that he brought from home. There were no more disturbances that night, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Personally, the last half of 2017 has been pretty exhausting. The most draining part, both emotionally, physically, and financially, has been the laborious task of moving my father into an aged care facility due to his rapidly advancing dementia. I live in Tasmania, where I grew up. I'm currently living and working in Brisbane, which is about 2,500 kilometers, 1,500 miles for you Imperials, to the north of Tasmania. I have been making the 3.5-hour flight down to Tasmania about twice a month to sort out my dad's situation. I have been busying myself by fixing up his empty, dilapidated home in order to get it ready to be sold. I moved out all of his furniture and belongings, save for a pile of blankets and pillows that I turned into a makeshift bed on the floor while I'm in visiting. The house is situated in a semi-rural area surrounded by overgrown trees and bushes. It's an old house. It's damp. Everything creaks and there is currently no electricity, which makes the nighttime very creepy. The house itself is not very secure. No alarm system. The doors have locks, but a forceful nudge will just pop open the door. I flew in on Christmas Eve in the late evening, picked up my hire car to make an hour-long drive down to the house. I stopped in at a mate's place, who lives about 10 minutes from my dad's place, to have a few beers and shoot the shit about this year that has just passed. After a couple of hours, I realized that I had probably surpassed the legal blood alcohol limit to drive. My mate's legendary wife dropped me off at Dad's and offered to come back in the morning to pick me up and go back to their place to get my car. A Christmas miracle. I entered my dad's house at around midnight. Inside, the house was pitch black, and in my slightly drunk state, I flipped the light switch and nothing happened. Oh yeah, that's right, no power. Using my phone as a light to navigate my way through the house over the creaky floorboards, I noticed that some of the tools that I had left laying around inside the house had been stolen. I sighed and accepted the fact that it was my own stupid fault for leaving them out in an unsecured house. Some kids probably noticed that no one was living there and took advantage of the situation. It was unsettling knowing that someone had been in here, but I didn't bother calling the police over a hammer, wrench, and screwdriver. That came to a grand total of about $16.50. Good news was the big toolbox in which I kept locked up in the laundry cupboard that houses my more expensive power tools was still there and intact. I studied the padlock and the space around it, and it looked pretty scratched up and dented, like someone had crudely attempted to pry it open. Nice try, dickheads, I said out loud to myself. The toolbox is very big and heavy, too big for one person to carry it, unless you're Andre the Giant. Exhausted, I went into one of the furnitureless bedrooms and made my makeshift bed out of blankets and pillows. I couldn't get comfortable, and it was taking me a while to drift off to sleep. As I was laying there, the only sounds I could hear over the ringing of my tinnitus was the gentle rustle of the wind through the trees. I could also hear what sounded like an unmistakable crunch of boots on the gravel driveway that went up the side of the house. I tried to listen harder. Then there was a loud gong sound of something solid coming into contact with the metal railing that leads up to the back door. This makes me sit up, wide-eyed, while my heart rate starts to increase. Maybe it was a wallaby or an opossum. I sit there, as still as possible, just listening. I can hear the sounds of the trees and the wind and nothing else for a few moments, and I start to calm down. This is interrupted by the pop and squeak of the back door being pushed open. Fuck. I freeze, not knowing what to do. I could hear footsteps creaking through the back of the house, and I hear the laundry cupboard being opened. I was up the other end of the hallway, but I could hear whispering. The only words I could make it were, "There, shh, do it quickly." I pull myself together and pull out my phone and call the police. I chat to the dispatcher while burying my head under the pillow to muffle my voice. I explain the situation to the dispatcher, and she says the police are on their way. While this is happening, I can hear a chink sound of what I'm assuming was the lock of the toolbox trying to be broken. The dispatcher suggests that I lock the door of the room I'm in. I agree, and as I slowly pad over across the room to the door, one of the floorboards creaks so fucking loudly. I freeze and hear dead silence from the laundry. They must have heard me. After about 30 seconds of standing still, I try to take another step and get yet another high-pitched creak. But this seems to work in my favor because I hear my new house guests scatter away out the back door. I lock the bedroom door and tell the dispatcher that I think they have gone. She tells me to stay put until the police arrive, and I tell her I'm more than happy to comply. After about 5 minutes, the cops arrive and the dispatcher bids me farewell. The police did a search of the area and found nothing, as expected. They had tried to break open the toolbox. One of the cops says, "Why didn't they just use bolt cutters? Fucking amateurs." And we have a little laugh. I explained to the police about how when I came home, some of the tools that I had left laying around were stolen, and the toolbox looked like it had already attempted to be broken into. Upon hearing that, the other cop stated his theory of how events took place. They probably broke in earlier tonight before you got here. They grabbed what they could, tried to open the toolbox but couldn't, and then left to go get something to open it with. While they were gone, you came home and then they arrived back here to open the toolbox. I doubt they were dangerous, probably just some kids. Good timing, I think to myself. I make a report and that's that. I stayed up until sunrise and then decided to get a couple of hours of sleep while my mate's wife, Lucy, came to pick me up to collect my car. I ask if I can keep my tools at their place for safekeeping, to which they agree. I drove down to my dad's old folks' home and had Christmas lunch with him and his new elderly buddies. The following day, I go to a hardware store and purchase some newer, sturdier door locks. I was 5 years old and my mom was going into labor with my younger brother. I stayed at my grandparents' while my folks were at the hospital. I shared the queen bed with my grandfather, who was sound asleep, snoring. At some point, late in the night, I was awoken by the bed shaking quite vigorously. It continued for like 5 minutes, but who knows, maybe it was just 30 seconds. I tried to shake my grandfather awake while calling for him to wake up. He eventually woke groggily, but had no clue when I asked him what was happening. He quickly fell back asleep, but I was frightened and very awake. I now sat up in bed, sitting in diffused moonlight. All was still and silent. I got up wanting to look at the Christmas tree. Christmas trees always brought me comfort, and that's what I craved after such a fright. From the foot of the bed, you could look out of the room, because the door was open, through the short hallway and into the front room and a picture window, maybe 25 or 30 feet away. They had a mid-century aluminum Christmas tree in front of that window. Not because retro was cool, but it was literally the same tree they used since the 50s. As I looked out to that tree without lights at 3 a.m., it, along with some presents, sat quietly. Only filtered bluish street light gently filled the room with weak illumination. However, something was different now. Sitting next to the aluminum tree was a pair of two huge black Doberman pinschers, sitting, silent, still, staring, straight at me. They had no pets. I jumped back in bed and threw the covers over me. I eventually fell asleep and woke up to morning sunshine, making the aluminum tree warmly shimmer. I think about what happened that night from time to time. It's the first paranormal encounter I had ever had. I've had a few. At that point in my life, I don't think I even had a concept of ghosts or the paranormal. Was it simply a 5-year-old with limited understanding of the world and an unlimited imagination? Was there something paranormal shaking that bed and presenting those enormous dogs? So for context, I'm a 22-year-old guy and I live in a large city in the Midwest. Now, I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's besides the point. I have many horror stories from those as well, but I'll tell those another time. It was Christmas Eve 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mom's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on for the night, just the usual. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger. He has all of his belongings. Several boxes of stuff, actually. Now my car is a 2006 Chevrolet Impala, so it's not too big. We get all of his stuff loaded up, barely, and are on our way. During the ride, he's crying, saying his girlfriend was cheating on him, and he had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease. So I was taking him to a hotel. Now, in my city, we have a street that is well known to have vices: hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and shady motels. The works. We get to the motel. He asks me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess, I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. I have a gun hidden in a concealed holster secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people who have tried to fight me, rob me, and all kinds of other things. But like I said, another time. The motel was on the street I mentioned before. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building. And I'm not a big fan of true crime and horror narration, so I'm on edge. He gets his key. The whole motel is ground level. So to help the guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff. So I started to help him unload his stuff. While on my second trip getting stuff, I saw a guy come out of a room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up to the room I was next to, not my passenger. One of the ladies pounded on the door, then opened it. That's when I saw the guy raise a fucking shotgun up out of his long coat and storm into the room. The two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them. Following the slammed door, I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out. Out of nowhere, my passenger came up behind to me. "I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas." And he gave me a cash chip. I didn't even notice he took the boxes out of my hands or slid a $5 bill in my pocket. I was frozen. I knew what may have been going down in that room. I had to leave, or at least get to where I could get my own gun. I know the guy and both ladies saw me, and I know they knew I saw the gun. I had to get the hell out of there. You know, no witnesses. I got in my car and sped away quickly. I got a block or so away and called the cops. I gave them every detail. After I got off the phone with the police, I signed out a lift. I hadn't made much money, but I was done. I got a call later that night. The cops investigated. They never found the gunman or the woman. They never answered the door I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said nothing had happened and that I was full of shit. Well, I know what I saw. This happened to my very close family friends on Christmas Day a few years ago. I used to babysit for this family starting around the age of 12, and I later house and dog sat for them months at a time all throughout my 20s. This story is particularly creepy for me because having spent a ton of time alone in their house. So, this family is enjoying a stereotypical Christmas Day evening in the family home. It's winter, and so it's dark very early. It's a drizzly, wet, foggy night outside. It's a large family, and the kids are all grown, in their 20s and 30s, most with jobs out of state, but everyone has come home to be together for the holidays. Siblings are busy playing the Xbox loot. TVs are on, Christmas music is playing, food is being cooked and eaten, and there's a lot of laughing and talking. This goes on for many hours. The youngest daughter spots her dad standing in the middle of the courtyard outside in a black hooded sweatshirt. The hood is over his head, so just his mouth and chin are visible, and he's just looking in at the house. She casually calls over to her mom, who's in the kitchen, to go check on Dad because it seems like he needs help with something in the yard. Except Mom says Dad is in his bedroom taking a nap. Mom and the sister quickly came to the realization that there is a creepy total stranger in a black hoodie just staring in at them, not moving, on Christmas Day evening. As you can imagine, the family collectively shits enough bricks to build another chimney for Santa. They proceed to alert everyone in the house, run around checking the locks on the many sliding glass doors and windows, and they wake up Dad. In the meantime, Black Hoodie Creep can see everyone's movements because the house is pretty much completely glass windowed walls. This guy continues to just stand there in an intentionally creepy Jason-like pose, not moving, except now he has a sinister smile on his face. It's obvious that he is enjoying being caught. At first, the family thinks it might be a practical joke. The family members start to call out things to intimidate him like, "If this is a joke, it's not funny. We already called the cops. We have a gun." But the guy just keeps standing there, smiling and not moving for a long time. Then, suddenly, he rushes up to the glass and starts pounding on it, not saying a word, his face still obscured by the hood. Obviously, he is intentionally trying to scare everyone, if not break into the house, and now the family really does call the cops. After pounding on the glass door for a while, he runs and hops over the fence near the home's trash cans and heads to the neighbors' yards. The neighbors are also good friends, so the family calls to let them know what is happening. But they never see the Black Hoodie man. The cops arrive within minutes, take the statements, check all the neighboring houses, but never find this guy. Not long after, the family had their courtyard area completely remodeled, including a new security and light system. The scariest bit of this story, for me, is that they have no idea how long this guy was just standing there, watching them enjoy their Christmas. Here's some bonus details. The home where this took place is in a quiet upper-class neighborhood. It's a square home with an interior square courtyard situated at the edge of a steep hill with a busy 6-lane road below. It would be very difficult to climb this hill and scale the back wall to access the back porch area, and even harder to escape down without falling onto the traffic below. It would also be hard to exit that neighborhood, unless climbing through people's yards without being spotted by the cops. The home is angled in such a way that the wind blows right through it, causing creaks and drafty sounds on even mildly windy days. A rustle or crunch sound would most likely be ignored. The home's layout is similar to many traditional Japanese homes, with sliding doors attached to each section of the house, leading to the square middle courtyard. Except rather than wooden panels or screens, this house is all sliding glass window hallways. If someone is in central courtyard at night, it is very easy to see into all areas of the house without being seen due to the reflection of the lights inside. However, the courtyard does have some dull footway lighting. The home is beautiful, but they have some creepy art, including stone statues of children playing in the courtyard and a collection of cringe clown art that was so popular in the 80s. Also, their senior dog used to growl intently at empty hallways in the middle of the night. He was probably just blind and deaf, but still freaky. I was often unnerved while house sitting for them, even before this happened. The home has a floor-to-roof iron front gate, impossible to climb over, by the way, and a wooden gate, that one's possible to climb, leading to the trash can storage adjacent to the neighbor's wooden fence. These are the only access points to the central courtyard. Here's my conclusion. A. This guy was a crazy ex or old school friend playing a prank on one of the now adult kids. But years have passed and it was never rebuilt, so this seems unlikely. B. This guy had some mental problems and or was possibly a peeping Tom type of pervert and was just having an episode. C. This was a Home Alone type of situation where some guy was squatting in the nice homes, counting on the fact that people won't be home for the holidays, and possibly decided to have some fun with his family once he was spotted. I seriously doubt this single guy was planning to actually take on a family of 6+ adults. I have not stayed alone in that house since, as the dog I used to watch passed away some time ago. I would love to hear your thoughts and reactions. This next story has some whistling in it. Of course, I won't do that to you. So, here we go. This story isn't that scary, but it stuck with me since it happened. I've read scarier things on here, but this one is still eerie to me, simply because I and the other party involved will never be able to fully explain it. This went down on Christmas Eve of 2016. My aunt and I were quietly watching TV and wrapping presents last minute. As far as we knew, we were the only ones awake in the house. Here's the layout. We were sitting facing the TV. Behind us was a staircase leading to the second floor of the house. Beside that was a hallway leading to the main floor bathroom and kitchen. So basically, the hallway is kind of behind the right banister. This is important to know later. So, as I'm bent over, hella concentrated on finishing wrapping gifts, I heard a sudden noise. It was someone whistling, "Oh Christmas Tree." very slowly and loudly. I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck kind of ad is on TV right now? I look up only to find that the same show was still quietly playing. The whistling was in fact coming from somewhere else in the room. Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. I took a look at my aunt, thinking maybe she had randomly broken out into some Christmas whistling, but she sat there looking back at me, just as silent and dumbfounded as me. I think she had my same train of thought. TV? Nope. It's definitely the other person in the room then. Wait, no it's not. How lovely are thy branches. So there we were, frantically darting our heads back and forth, searching the room for where the whistling source was coming from. Your boughs so green in summertime. We then came to one last logical conclusion. One of our family members was awake, hiding behind the banister, trying to scare us. We both leapt up and ran to the hallway, finding absolutely nobody there. Stay bravely green in winter time. The whistling suddenly ceased. Back to almost silence, aside from the minimal TV background noise. We stood there for a few minutes, not knowing what to think or do or say. My aunt let me bunk with her that night, though. We had trouble sleeping. Nothing like that has happened since that night. We told everyone in the morning, but they all laughed at us. I'm willing to believe it was a family member pulling a joke on us, but the only place to really hide was behind that banister, so I'm not sure what to make of it. But that's my possible ghost story. I hope you enjoyed. If anything similar has ever happened to you, please, I'd love to hear it. So, I was organizing some stuff in storage on Christmas night because I was planning to move out around New Year's. I share a storage unit with my mom and dad in a kind of sketch area of town, but a part of town I knew nonetheless. All my stuff was in the back of the unit, so I had to do a lot of lifting and moving. It was getting dark and I was the only one left in the storage lot. Our unit is on the outside lot. As I was taking stuff out and getting it ready for the move the next few days, I see a man come out of the inner storage lot inside the building. I kind of got a sketchy vibe from the dude, but he seemed homeless, so I said happy holidays, as he asked if he could help, but I insisted that I could do this on my own. He then left and I continued moving stuff back into storage. There was a lot of shit I had to move, so I knew I needed to hurry. The guy then shows up again and approaches me closer and says, "You sure you don't need any help?" And I say, "I'm good, but thank you." And then he says, "Look, I need help moving stuff into my storage. Can you open the door for me to the inner lot?" At that moment, I knew something wasn't right. I then declined, saying I needed to get home as it was important to what she said. I think what I need to do is more important. My anxiety started kicking in hardcore. I had no idea what to do. I finished packing my stuff and clutching my keys to the car to get out. I locked my storage unit and then struck up a conversation. I tried to keep my cool because I had no idea if this man had a gun or a knife on him. So I said I would help him, but had a plan to start running, had my phone ready, and made sure he stayed ahead of me. I then told a fib that my mother was sick and today was a hard day, to which the guy started to be more friendly and nice. He then stops before we got to the door and says, "Actually, I don't need your help." At that moment, I knew I used my wit to its advantage. He felt empathy and I started walking away. He then asked for a ride and I said I couldn't do that. I started walking faster and he followed me and said please, and then asked why I looked so stressed and worried. I then got into my car and he started knocking on my window. I rolled it down and said happy holidays, then drove my ass to the gate that I had to enter a code into and got the hell out of there. I knew that he was going to mug me or rob me, or possibly worse. All I know is I'm investing in some self-defense weapons, as that was the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true horrific Christmas stories. I'd like to give a very special shout out to the reformed members of the channel. Inner Scare Wifey, Howler's Mom, Tina Mead, Seven, Les Crispin, Tammy Slayton, CAG, Denise S., Samantha Place, Stephanie McLaren, Corpse Lover, Normie DW, Christy Elias, Cindy Cleveland, and Patty's niece. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you are awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourself a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. And as always, Merry Christmas to all, and to all a good night.